You'd have cared less about what Q thought of you, or of what the other family members thought of you for trying to befriend him. It wasn't like you cared much. You had walked along the riverbank, kicking rocks into the deep unknown, which stopped around 10 feet. You shoved your hands in your pockets. Who cares? I don't. Wayne, Yuki called behind you. You turned your small head and glared. Go away, rat. You had heard him sigh. Come on now, I know it burns. You had stuck up your head in dismissal, but your older brother could have cared less. He just wanted to protect you, like Ayame had failed to do for him. You were not a zodiac sign and had less importance than Yuki, but Aikido had kept you two together because he knew how much you cared for each other. You assumed he also knew Yuki would never forgive him for tearing you two apart. You had wiped your tear-streaked face and hopped off the cement blocks. It took some convincing, but eventually you would let Yuki tend to your scrape. That is, if he'd promised to do it cautiously, which he had. If I'm a rat, what does that make you? You had stuck up your nose again, making him chuckle. Fine. Just as long as you know you're hurting my feelings. You remember your head jerking at his comment and his eyes filling with mischievousness. You're so mean, Yuki. You beat him with your good arm. He sat next to you with a rested smile. His smile morphed into a small frown when he said, Wayne, you know you can't talk to Kyo anymore, right? Your tiny smile dropped too. Yeah, I just don't understand it. You whined. What did I do to him? I was trying to be friends, for crying out loud. Yuki understood what you meant, but he also understood that people like Kyo didn't need a reason to hate people like the two of you. It was natural. Call it animal instinct, but all in all, still true. Nothing. You did nothing. He sighed, then picked up his smile. Come on, let's go home. You held hands with your older brother as he led you home, but knew it wasn't like all the other times. He had to drag you home after you'd run off because of one of Kyo's antics. Something in you had broke. Something in you had hardened. You were a far cry away from being outgoing. You might have been intelligent, but you were most certainly not open about it. It wasn't your fault. Not really. At least, that's what you told yourself. You hadn't seen him in 7 years. 7 years have passed, and you had thought about him every day since. You sigh and flop on your comforter. Yuki was making homemade boba and probably failing, and Shigori was busy in his room, typing away on his typewriter and scaring his poor editor half to death. You had nothing to do and were bored. That's what you told yourself when you found him sitting in the living area, snacking on Yuki's homemade boba and finding something to complain about. You sucked in a breath and retreated almost immediately. When did he get here? Why was he here? The audacity that he would even think himself welcome. You grew red in the face. You needed cold air, needed to leave, to get out before you suffocated. You made yourself count to 10 before walking as fast as you could to the front door. You, of course, had to pass Kyo and his complaints, and your brother and his horrible cooking. But it would be worth it. You had almost made it. So close. Your hand even grazed the front door before his voice stopped you. It wasn't his voice particularly, though. It was what he said that had stopped you in your tracks. Why? He said it as if asking a question, said it as if everything he did was forgotten, as if he'd never pushed you, never said he hated you and your family, never said he wished you'd just die already. You ignored him and pulled open the door. He didn't follow you, but that was all right. Out in the cold, you shivered in nothing but your pajamas. I hate him, you breathed. I hate him, you seethed. As your teeth chattered, you wondered why he was here. Why had he shown up? He had all but 7 years. He'd been training up in the mountains in one of the family's dojos. Why had it taken him so long? Your first thought was that he came to apologize, but you realized how foolish that sounded as soon as the thought finished. You hugged yourself and wished the new year would come already. Then you'd be able to go live with your brother, Ayami, in his loft with his assistant. The next day, you threw on your uniform without waiting for Yuki like usual. You wouldn't chance to see him again. You watched that girl, Toru Honda, with envious eyes. Her careless attitude, her ditziness, her ability to take everything head-on with a smile blasted to the nines. What you would give to be like that again. You slid the door to your house open and walked through, making a straightaway for your room on the 2nd floor. You'd have to come back down the stairs because you were thirsty, though, but better safe than sorry. You crept through your house like a ninja, almost like one. Kyo watched your frenzying antics through a crack in his bedroom door. How you could flinch at the sound of just a pen drop was unbeknownst to him. As time went on, you got used to living with Kyo. Well, avoiding him around the house, and everyone along with him. You kind of became a poor little hobbit. When Yuki had enough, he opened your bedroom door. But to you, it seemed like the world was ending. Come on, YN, come to the sitting area. No, you screeched in a low tone. You had resorted to starving until everyone was asleep, then going down and getting food from the leftovers in the kitchen. One night, Yuki had caught you. It was the butt crack of dawn and you were making tea. That was a few nights ago, and you assumed he was half asleep and thought he was dreaming, or perhaps just forgotten because he never mentioned it at school. Now, though, you thought differently. YN, I will drag you by the feet if you do not come out here willingly. Move aside, they don't like you. A voice rumbled and your heart dropped. Get out, you shouted, for fear of something worse than Yuki threatening you. YN, look, you've been holed up in your room for days. We haven't seen much of you. Kyo wants to see you. He said he misses you. Shigure said, Shut up, dog. The voice, Kyo's, shouted. You curled up into a ball and planted your fist firmly on the floor. Make me. YN, Yuki pleaded, taking one step into your room. Please come out. No. You shut down, closing your eyes, refusing to even look at him anymore. What's wrong with them? You heard Kyo mumble, and out of anger, you shot back immediately. Maybe I don't want to be pushed again. It went quiet, and so you pushed yourself up while opening your eyes, and stated calmly, Maybe I don't like ignorant people. Then you stood and began walking toward them. Maybe I just want to be alone. They were in your eyesight, along with your door. Or maybe I just can't stand the sight of you. You slammed your door shut and retreated into your pile of blankets on the floor. The next time you saw Kyo was in the hallway. You were trotting toward Yuki's class when you saw him, and that Toru Honda girl you admired walked into a room. You had the slight urge to follow them inside and demand to know why Yuki was walking inside an empty classroom with someone of the opposite gender. You were in fact about to do just that when something orange caught your eye and you had to hide. You cursed Shigiri for tricking Kyo into taking your school entrance exam, because now you had to avoid him in here as well. You thought you were safe for the time being. That was until he rounded the same corner and blocked your exit, demanding that you explain to him why you hate him. I don't have time for this. You tried to push out of his caged arms, looking to the floor, never once meeting his gaze. You refused to look at him and absolutely relented in how it pissed him off a little. Why in? His voice was angry, or maybe annoyed. Either way, you couldn't find a reason to care. You ignored him and pushed your way through. He gripped your wrists and threw you against the wall, bracing your head for impact. Why do you hate me so much? What did I do to you? The questions he asked resonated in your mind. They sounded so familiar, so like the questions you would ask yourself when he pushed you, when he told you to die, when he claimed Yuki and yourself were nothing but entertainment for Aikido. You bit your tongue, bit it so hard you drew blood. Still, you spat the words, "Go die," and jerked out of his hands for a final time, making sure you didn't look back. New Year's had given you a break from school, but Shigiri made up for that by his annoying questions. Do you have a boyfriend? Maybe a girlfriend? Don't you have any crushes? I'm sure our little prince here would be glad to help you with them. His voice made you want to throw up. Shigiri, Yuki, and Kyo were going back to the estate for the family celebration. Momoji was going to dance. You opted out because you weren't a part of the zodiac signs, and were going to stay at the house with Toru, who, now you knew the zodiac secret. She found out as soon as Kyo showed up. You thought it was typical, but didn't care much of it. As long as the girl wasn't causing much trouble, you saw no problem with it. I'm going up to the roof, so don't look for me, okay? You told Toru. She nodded and propped a picture of her mother in front of her. You frowned. I know I didn't know her, but I think she'd be proud. Toru smiled at that, a single tear rolling down her cheek. Thank you. You smiled back and continued up to the roof, sighing when you saw the fireworks hadn't started. You brought a bottle of apple cider with you to cheers to the new year, but didn't think it mattered much now. Here's to the new year, you said to the wind. Here's to getting out of the Sohma family. You sighed and began prying off the cap of the bottle. Here's to ugly truths and pretty lies. The cap opened with a few more smacks. To new enemies and old ones. You sighed and lay back on the chimney. What about new friends? You jumped and thrust your fist in the air, catching the slide of Kyo's t-shirt. He looked down and laughed dryly. Pitiful. You narrowed your eyes. Get out. This is neutral territory. He waved. You leave. You frowned and made to do so, thinking that watching the fireworks from your window wouldn't be such a bad idea after all. Wait, he called, reaching for your sleeve. You jerked out of his hands and glared. Don't touch me. Why in? He looked desperate. Good, you thought? That's how I looked, how you made me feel. Give up, you say. I will never forgive you. I want you to live knowing that you fucked something up and can't take it back. I didn't mean it. I was stupid. He shouted. I was 9 years old with no one. For once, you stopped and listened. I hated you. I hated Yuki. I still do. He mumbled the last bit. Everyone looked at me like I was some curse and avoided me like I carried a plague. You sucked in a deep breath, remembering the faces you got when walking and trying to talk with Kyo. You thought maybe those faces weren't really for you. Then you remembered the pitying ones, and you cracked again. I remember. You sniffle. I remember the faces. I never meant to hurt you, but the way you acted, like we could just be friends, like nothing stood in between it just made me so angry because I knew it could never really happen. You nodded, finally seeing it from his point of view. I see. Please, stay and watch the fireworks with me. Why-in? His voice was pleading, and you couldn't bear it. You looked at him, looked through his eyes, in and out. Finding nothing, you closed your eyes and leaned into his shoulder. Things aren't the same, you state, hearing him suck in a breath. Akito's planning something. He lets out his breath and relaxes. I know.
He's never gonna make it. All the poor people he's forsaking.